Dear friends, welcome on
Дорогие
Alatra TV.
друзья, добро
Today we
пожаловать
have
на
a very,
АЛЛАТРА
very
ТВ.
special guest,
Сегодня с
Christopher
нами
Dunn.
очень
But before
особый
we
гость
introduce
Кристофер
him,
Дан.
let
Но
me quickly
прежде чем мы
explain
представим
that
его, я
we
хотел
are
бы
conducting these
коротко
interviews
рассказать,
with
что
world-famous
мы проводим
scientists and
интервью
researchers
с
in the
известными
context of a
учеными, исследователями.
global international project, Kaleidoscope Effects, which was launched in August 2020 by volunteers of Alatra International Public Movement. And the goal of this project is to bring back truth to people. This is very important because in the times of global cataclysms, we need to understand our past to move forward. And we are trying to understand what is the purpose, or maybe the purposes of the pyramids, and how can we reactivate this global pyramidal complex all over the world. And we'll do it together with Marek. Marek, I pass you the word.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your word. And I would just like to follow up on Losha's words that on January 13th, we'll be conducting a following Kaleidoscope of Facts. And this time it will be focused on the topic of signs, especially the sign Alatra. And I would also like to introduce our today's co-host, which is Olga. Olga, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Marek. Thank you so much, Alexei. My name is Olga from Russia. And today we are having a guest with us, Christopher Dunn from Illinois, from America. And he's the engineer, and he'll be talking about activation, how to activate the ancient power plant. Also taking the chance, Christopher had a birthday yesterday, so we would like to congratulate you with your birthday and wish you whatever you would like to wish for yourself. And maybe you can introduce yourself and tell us like your professional background briefly and introduce you to our guests.
Well, thank you very much, Olga, and thank you everybody for inviting me to this conversation. My background is in engineering. It began when I was a teenager in Manchester, England. So I served what they call a youth apprentice, and taking the skills that I learned through my apprenticeship, I emigrated to America in 1969. And so it's been a while, and yesterday was my 75th birthday. So hopefully my synapses are all going to be firing full bore today as we continue forward. I've had a very wonderful career in the United States. And one of the things that I learned earlier on is that creativity, and this is a subject that that you are very interested in, and we'll probably discuss more later. I found that that there was a freedom here that did not exist in the culture that I came from, in terms of people who had belief in themselves and what they could accomplish. And that kind of freedom and the spirit behind it is what actually drove me to improve myself, improve my knowledge through my career, and advance through my career through engineering and through the management ranks. I retired in 2013. And I was a human resource manager. So I had a very, very varied background, and was benefited immensely, not just from what I was able to learn through my career, but also financially compensated for it. So now comfortably retired, I turn back to a subject that I picked up in 1977. When I started to study the Great Pyramid. And this came about after coming across a book in a kind of what they call a renegade bookstore. Some people call it renegade bookstore, other people may call it a New Age bookstore. But they have some unusual books written by non-conventional authors. And one of those authors was Peter Tompkins. And he wrote the book, The Secrets of the Great Pyramid. So that's what started me off on my path and my passion for the next 40 odd years was actually reading that book and becoming inspired by the people who had contributed to it by doing their own research in Egypt and presenting different points of view. But the common theme throughout the book was that they essentially understood what the conventional viewpoint was on the origins of the Great Pyramid and its purpose, but they rejected it because of a lack of evidence and a lot of anomalous kind of features that really did not fit into that particular narrative. And as their arguments were laid out, I had to agree with their point of view that the Great Pyramid was something much more than a tomb. And then during that period, I picked up a lot of other books. I mean, his bibliography of the people he cited and introduced in his book, one of them being William Flinders Petrie, one of the earliest, actually the first British Egyptologist. And he had published in 1883 a book called Pyramids and Temples of Giza. And so this gentleman was an architect, a surveyor, and his father was an engineer. But he studied 10 years in Egypt and wrote many different books, but he was very detailed, very meticulous. But one of the things that he did notice was that, and wrote about, was the machinery that the ancient Egyptians had to have used to create some of their artifacts. And so that was very useful to my studies. But the Great Pyramid was something that it seemed like there was a huge question mark sitting on top of it. What am I? What was my purpose? And it seemed to me that the theories that were surfaced would attempt to explain certain features of the Great Pyramid, but other features of the Great Pyramid were not answered in the presentation of those theories. And so one day as I was reading, kind of a light bulb went up above my head, and it occurred to me that the Great Pyramid must have functioned as a power plant. And the logic, if you're looking at, why would you think such a thing? The logic behind that for me was, why would a civilization invest that much effort, time and resources into a project when they were not going to get any benefit out of it in terms of energy or some function? And yes, the argument could be that, well, these revered leaders can demand all kinds of resources to glorify themselves after death. And you have mausoleums, you have the Taj Mahal that was crafted for a leader's wife, those actually look like spaces where you would house a corpse, or you have these magnificent cathedrals. They provided a benefit for society. But the pyramids were totally anomalous. They were very unusual and mysterious, and the design of them was unique and didn't really fit, the concept of the idea that they were used for a human habitation, either on a regular basis or just at one time. And then associated with that and documented very well is the precision with which the Great Pyramid was built. And the precision of the Great Pyramid was something that resonated with me because throughout my whole life I have been associated with the creation of precise or precision artifacts, modern artifacts like jet engine products and things of that nature. So I was aware in the real world today what it means to actually create precision, and so when I come across it in the Great Pyramid, that resonates with me, and that is a part of the whole kind of backstory, the state of mind that I reached during my research. That you had this precision, and on a scale of acres, we got 13 acres of finely crafted limestone, and you know, why would they do that? Just for any purpose back in what was supposed to be a primitive society. I mean, they wouldn't have even the concept of precision in primitive societies doesn't exist. It's only when you actually come into a society where they find that if they get an idea on how something should be done, but it can't be done without it being precise. And so then you have the introduction of lenses, and then you have the introduction of the printing industry that requires a certain amount of precision. And then you come into the Industrial Revolution where machines were being invented, and they needed precision in order to operate. But without that need, it just takes much more time and effort to build precision into a product. So that was another aspect to it.
So basically, you looked at the pyramid from the perspective, of engineering perspective, yeah, just to understand that obviously it was not a tomb for the pharaohs, and to see how it works, because the title of our today's conversation is how we can activate this beautiful power plant, what we can do as today's civilization to make the knowledge of the past working. And we know that you prepared also your PowerPoint presentation to explain to us your hypothesis. And maybe you can start putting it, sharing on the screen so we can see it and show it to our viewers.
Yeah, we can do that.
Thank you so much. So it's going to be a more illustrative example for us. Okay,
so yeah, this is a view of the Giza Plateau. I don't think it needs any introduction, but yeah, there you go. And you know, continuing on with my my discussion about the genesis of the idea of the Great Pyramid being a power plant, it occurred to me that, and during my studies, that it was not just a precise artifact, but it was a deliberately designed and built artifact that had a unique relationship with the Earth. And that relationship was a harmonic relationship. It's actually by size and dimensions. It is in harmony with the Earth, and so that was the origins of the concept that being connected to the planet and being in harmony with the planet, and the dimensions being an integer, or you know, a harmonic of the Earth dimensions, that it was that relationship that drew energy out of the Earth, and it passed through the Great Pyramid, and it was converted into usable energy. So that overall concept is one that I think can bring different benefits. It's not just the it's not just the energy that we can use to power our devices, whatever they may be, but it's also other features associated with how that energy is tapped into. And essentially what it does, it draws the seismic stresses out of the Earth and converts them to usable energy. What would that do? It could actually reduce the effects of earthquakes, if not eliminate them altogether, because instead of allowing the stresses in the Earth's plates to build up until they reach a point where there is a shift, they would dissipate over time. They would be drawn out of the plates over time, so that they don't have a chance to build up until they become a very destructive force. And so that's one thing. But the other thing is actually, because of how you connect to that energy, you have to do it using harmonics and frequency. Those harmonics and frequency are actually the same as the Earth's, maybe at a much higher harmonic and frequency, but still, you know, they're associated with the Earth energies, and so are humans associated with the Earth energies, and we resonate to certain frequencies too. That particular system would also benefit humans in that it would harmonize not just the planet but the humans that live on it. And I know we talk about the existence of all the other pyramids around the Earth, and then the concept is raised that, well, perhaps they are all somehow a part of a large grid of oscillators that are actually harmonizing the Earth and the people on it. I know it's kind of a unique idea. It almost seems impossible, but can you imagine, though, a system so holistic that once you get it to run, you draw positive energy out of it in different ways, and you affect it's not just a something that you meter and sell to the population. Is something that is freely given. That to me is a huge benefit. Would be a huge benefit to society if we could do that. But it's not just, you know, the original concept of, well, okay, if the pyramids are coupled oscillators and they're resonating harmonically with the question is then, okay, how do you prove that? And of course, with science, the devil's always in the details, and so the objective for me was to explain all the details inside the Great Pyramid and find an explanation for them within the concept of that machine actually creating electromagnetic energy out of mechanical energy. I call them geomechanical power plants, and that is just a term that I assign to them. So within the Great Pyramid, we see the evidence for what I call a very advanced state of the art. And it's like, you know, when you look into any society, they generally, their products describe the state of the art that they've reached. And I'll give you an example. Like the state of the art today is much higher and has greater perfection than what it did 100 years ago. And the reason for that is that when we actually manufacture things today, we are using machines and technologies that have evolved over the past 100 years. And the objective has been always to eliminate the variables in the manufacturing process. So when you go to say an old machine back in the 1940s, that machine is reflective of the abilities of the society at that time. And if you go have a machine that would do the same work today, the worst or the most inferior part of the object that it will produce, it has a higher level of quality than the best quality that you would get off of one of these ancient machines. And this is, you know, the state of the art that we have compared to 100 years ago. And even so, when you look at you can relate to it yourself. If you look at the way cars were manufactured back in the 70s, and the fit and finish and precision of the bodies was inferior compared to what we find today. That's because of this application of continuous improvement and invention and improving the state of the art. And so when you understand that kind of history of how precision is applied, how ideas are applied, and how products are made in our modern society, and really the Industrial Revolution is less than 200 years. It started in like the 1870s in north of England, and today, you know, I mean, we have just over 100 years of development, and you see where we are now. And then you have to ask the question, well, what did the ancient Egyptians have? I mean, the ancient Egyptians in modern history supposedly lasted about 3,000 years. And the interesting thing to that, and I'll make a quick point here, and anybody can jump in at any time, but the point I would like to make is that when you study the works of the ancient Egyptians, the people who created the pyramids, who created all the statuary and all the other different artifacts, you find an amazing precision and consistency between different artifacts, and you can see that they must have been using advanced tools. But that proposal is argued against by conventional academics who will say that no, they were using stone hammers and copper chisels and you know, very primitive, simple instruments. And so the point I would like to make is understanding how humans develop and work and apply themselves over a long period of time. You go back into ancient Egypt, and the conventional story is that the ancient Egyptians started in the first dynasty. The Great Pyramid was built in supposedly the fourth dynasty, but over a period of not 150 years, 200 years, over a period of thousands of years, the Egyptians did not improve their tools one bit, because artifacts that are explained away by the primitive tool method of creating products, they still are used to create products that were supposedly created over 1,000 years later. And you know, that is kind of counterintuitive to how humans actually work. So but getting back to this schematic, what I want to do is to actually go through and explain each part of the interior. And I will introduce certain known aspects while I'm doing it. Take the overall concept is that the Great Pyramid is a geomechanical power plant. Vibration energy is drawn through the pyramid. It is converted to airborne sound in the Grand Gallery, And then it focuses into the King's Chamber. The King's Chamber is created out of red granite, or pink granite, that was quarried in Aswan, about 500 miles away. And so the unique properties of the King's Chamber what actually supports the idea that it was creating energy. And we'll talk about the different aspects of that as we go forward with more detailed slides. But the overall function of it is that you have the energy source. The source has to be primed, and so in the subterranean chamber you have activation of the bedrock and the Great Pyramid to cause it to resonate, and when it resonates, it couples with the Earth and draws energy from it. There is the Queen's Chamber, so-called Queen's Chamber, horizontal passage, and the associated shafts. You've got a southern shaft and northern shaft, and in the Queen's Chamber, they were creating hydrogen. The hydrogen passed through the horizontal passage into the Grand Gallery and filled the interior, including the King's Chamber. Then the energy, the King's Chamber, which was vibrating in harmony with the vibrations coming through the pyramid and also through the Grand Gallery, was affected the hydrogen gas and drove it to a higher energy level. And so you have a hydrogen gas at a higher energy level. The northern shaft has unique dimensions, and the dimensions of the northern shaft are resemble or approximate what the dimensions you would need for a waveguide, and the frequency of the energy going through that, or the wavelength of the microwave, is 8.309, and the shaft is 8.4 inches wide. So the 8.309 is the wavelength of hydrogen microwave. So with the input through the northern shaft, it passes into the King's Chamber, and as it crosses the King's Chamber, it collects or builds up energy. There is what they call in the laser physics a population inversion, where an input signal will actually draw or entrain energy. It will cause the electrons to drop down to ground state, and as they drop down to ground state, they release a packet of energy that's picked up, and it's focused through the southern shaft to the outside. There is a little more to that. We can get into a little more later. And so taking everything into account, you have all the elements to actually create, to draw energy, mechanical energy, and convert it to electromagnetic energy, and do it in a very sophisticated way. And the beauty of it is it's all based on harmony and frequencies. And in effect, it is actually what I consider to be a huge musical instrument with a very loud voice. So let's look at some of the evidence. Is there any questions about what I've said so far? Are there any questions?
Maybe just to clarify one thing. So you said this Cheops pyramid was using basically mechanical energy and was transforming it into electromagnetic energy. So also mentioned that everything is in place and everything is supposed to be like working. So what exactly is lacking, or maybe something is, some equipment was removed, from whole system to make it work? Or we have everything in place. So what exactly needed to, you know, to turn it on, this massive power plant, from your point of view?
Well, I can answer that question now or later, but being as you've asked it now, I can answer it. It would take quite a lot of development. I mean, I think what exists right now actually suggests that certain other elements existed, or certain other structures existed, such as in the Grand Gallery. That was how they housed resonators, and so, you know, when we talk about how they're designed, there are certain features within the Grand Gallery that predict that they were they fitted within the space, and they reached to the ceiling, which was 28 feet high. And so, you know, there's 27 pairs. There's 27 of them that span the width of the gallery up to the horizontal passage there. So you know, when you look at what is it going to take to turn it on, number one, I don't think we could actually, not in my lifetime anyway, which is getting shorter, but I don't think we have the political or financial will to actually refurbish the Great Pyramid that's in Egypt and turn it on. I think probably the best approach would be to build one in another location from scratch after we have proved out the different concepts and shown that they work. And you know, it's a very detailed kind of process that we're going through here, because it's like a reverse engineering, and you're not just looking at, you know, the overall design, the schematic, and saying, yeah, well, this was here, this was here, this was it. It actually gets down to examining, you know, different substances and taking measures.
Maybe you can also explain for our viewers what it means, reverse engineering, so for them it's going to be clear. And the second thing is that just imagine if we find these 27 missing resonators to put in the Grand Gallery. So this is maybe something else is missing, or only these 27 resonators from the Grand Gallery that got lost?
There's quite a lot missing, and but as far as reverse engineering is when you take an object, or say a machine, and you take it apart to try and understand how it functions. And that happens all the time. I mean, in industry, one manufacturer would take a competitor's machine, whether it be a car or, you know, some other device. They would take it into their shop and take it apart and then examine it to see if there's anything they could learn from it in order to compete. And, you know, or if they would improve on it. And this is how, you know, improvements have been made. It's been a lust for profit, really. It's like, you know, if you're not improving, if you're not making things better and faster, so, you know, more functionality at a cheaper price, then you may as well close up, because you're eventually going to go out of business. So that's reverse engineering. It happens every day, and this is an example of reverse engineering where you basically have a concept of how this machine functions, and so then you examine every little detail of it to see how it functions. And of course, you know, in any scientific study, you also have the potential to be wrong. I mean, any theory, it has to be able to be proven or falsifiable, and so what you rely on is further evidence, such as, you know, new discoveries that may either cause you to reject parts of your understanding or theories, or it may, those new discoveries may support them, or they may alter your theory in some way, whether it's positively or negatively. But it's still, it's like, don't hold on to your ideas too closely, because somebody's going to come along and change them eventually. And it's the same in research and science. So, that is reverse engineering. The ability to recreate it depends on a lot of things. It depends on the political will, the financial support, and the talent and brains to be able to take this further. For instance, acoustic modeling of the interior would be very, very beneficial, and I've been trying to get people interested in doing that. They are interested in doing it. But the other aspect to the Great Pyramid is that it's in a part of the world that is, in Egypt, they're very sensitive, and it is more like a religious object than a materialistic or machine kind of object. It's held very dearly to their hearts. It's a part of their history and their culture, and they believe it to be a tomb. And also it's an archaeological site. So the control of the Great Pyramid is controlled by the Supreme Council of Antiquities, and that they are the ones that have the authority over it. Until, the political forces in Egypt begin to recognize that it may be something greater, and they start to steer the bus, you may say, is they will steer it in a direction that will reveal its true nature. And I think that's going on now to a certain extent. I mean, there is definitely a grassroots movement in Egypt where young people are not listening to the old stories about the Great Pyramid. They're more interested in people like me and what I have to say about it. At least that's what I was told, and there seems to be some truth to that, because even some of the Egyptians that I've met over the years are more interested in actually explaining the Great Pyramid for what it is. Why wouldn't they? In my second book, I devoted my second book, Lost Technologies of Ancient Egypt, to the Egyptians, because I saw that if it was up to Western universities, that there was not going to be any change of heart or change of mind, and the ideas that the ancient Egyptians were much more advanced than what they have been teaching us, that wasn't going to change. And so, I came to the realization that the Egyptians had to take control of their own history and rewrite their own history books, because in the past, the invaders have written their history for them. And so they see that needs to change. There's a significant number of people who see that has to change, but it takes a revolution, not necessarily a violent revolution, but sometimes it's a generational revolution where people exit the planet, and new people with new ideas take their place, and then things can change. But you have always have your nemesis, your threshold guardian, that will block you at every turn, especially when they're immersed in the old thinking.
We will try to be optimistic, because in the second part of our conversation, we'll be also elaborating on about creative society. And
Right.
this could be considered as evolution, actually. But maybe we can come to the next slide, because we know that you have prepared.
Yes,
Yeah.
well,
Thank you.
I'll just go quickly through this. I mean, I'm illustrating the Queen's Chamber now, because this is an example of how new information can either support a theory, or it can call it into question, or even cause it to be eliminated and taken out of consideration. So my theory on the Queen's Chamber was that you had two chemicals coming into this chamber and mixing, one being a dilute hydrochloric acid solution, and then the other one a hydrated zinc solution. And when the pyramid was built, intentionally, these shafts did not connect fully into that space. There was what they call a limestone left. They call it a left. They just left it there. It was a 5 inches of solid limestone, and it was actually, it was discovered. The shafts were discovered in 1874 by a gentleman of the name Wayman Dixon. And he was poking around. He saw a crack in the wall and poked a reed through it, and it disappeared. There was no resistance to it. So he had one of his workmen chisel the limestone away and discovered these shafts. Similarly, he went to the northern shaft and did the same thing and discovered that. So that is basically the story up until recently. And so there's always been a question about where the shafts went to, because there was no exit point discovered on the outside of the Great Pyramid. And so that was always a huge mystery. Also, the interior of this chamber was covered in salt up to about an inch thick. And, there's been a lot of speculation about the origins of that salt. My theory was that it was because of the chemical reaction and the creation of the hydrogen gas that it interacted with the limestone and leached salts to the surface. So let's move on. But when we talk, well, let me finish up a little bit. When we talk about the passage of these chemicals, the shafts were not open, but perhaps there was a very small orifice, and then the chemicals came through at a metered rate. In other words, only so much of each chemical entered into this space over a given time. And that is important when we consider some of the other features of this shaft. Let me move on. So we didn't know where the shaft went to until 1993, and a robotic engineer from Germany, Rudolf Gantenbrink, he built a robot to go up the southern shaft. He was actually hired by the German mission in Cairo to do some cleaning, to actually clean out the shafts in the King's Chamber to provide better ventilation for that space. And so while there, he proposed the idea of exploring the southern shaft, because like everybody else, he didn't know where the southern shaft ended. Nobody did. And so that was a question that he wanted to answer. So he came back with an upgrade to his robot. They called it Upuat 2. And Upuat is a term that means the opener of the ways. The robot climbed up the shaft, and they came across a blockage. Now remember that this shaft is only about 8 inches square, so they call this Gantenbrink's door, but for a door for what? it's not. They assumed that it was a door, and they claimed that these pins that came through it were actually used to lift it up for some reason as a part of the mechanism to lift it up. I saw this documentary in 1993, and and immediately it became apparent to me that this was a part of the machine, and the function of those pins was to actually serve as what I call a fluid switch. So it's when the shaft was full of fluid, there would be a connection. There would be electron flow between the what I call electrodes, kind of like a car battery, if you will. But there would be electron flow, and then when the fluid dropped, that would cut the circuit, and it would be a signal for more chemical to be pumped up to the southern shaft to replenish it. And the reason why it was necessary to know exactly how much chemical was in there is because the flow rate into the Queen's chamber depended on the head pressure. In other words, the weight of the column of water or chemical would determine the amount that was fed into the chamber. So a very interesting exploration by Rudolf Gantenbrink. And then we see areas in the southern shaft that are eroded. This area right here is deeply eroded on image B on the floor, and so that raises a lot of questions. And also some of the striations on the walls of the shaft. You can see on image A, you can see that the striations are at an angle. Well, that's because the shaft is at an angle, and the robot, the point of view of the robot, that makes it appear that you're looking horizontally, but you're not. You're looking up. In my book, I illustrate the door, Gantenbrink's door, so to speak, to be about 3.64 inches with electrodes coming in and also being directed down or connected to the means to signal, notify, turn on a motor, or allow another particular action to occur that would feed more chemicals into the shaft. This is all. This is not rocket science. It's all known. That's all known technologies. I mean, they exist in industry today. Then in 2002, they did the exploration with another robot, and that was broadcast on television. And they used an ultrasonic thickness tester to determine how thick the block was, so they could drill a hole through it. And they recorded that thickness. It was 3.25, so it was in the ballpark, I think. As far as functionality, if you were an engineer designing that, I think you could design a 3.25 or 3.6. I don't think it would make that much difference. So there was the testing, and then you'll see on the upper left image that one of the pins had been broken off in the process of applying that ultrasonic thickness tester.
I'm sorry, can I have a maybe not really smart question, but on the previous slide I saw copper cables. If you can go back to the previous slide.
You're talking about that one?
Yeah, exactly. I can see copper cables. Well, so I'm just wondering.
That was my my concept. It was not based on. It wasn't. It was not based on any known features. It was basically saying, okay, these those that were protruding were the only objects that we know of, and so in the concept of the Giza power plant, I added these features, the copper cables, and in order to explain how that technology actually worked. So now we're getting to the point where we're exploring the southern shaft, and we're going to discover whether these copper cables exist, if my theory was correct, or if it might need to revisit it.
And Christopher,
yeah.
before we are coming to this, your explanation, maybe you can also, because in your book you are saying that two shafts that coming to the Queen's chamber, they are not going actually through the chamber itself, but 3 inches. I mean, they stop before 3 inches.
Yeah.
So maybe you have some explanation for this, and we just would like to apologize in advance why we'll be from time to time interrupting you, because for us it's very important to figure out how it works. And you have very detailed explanation in your book, The Giza Power Plant. And we also advise our viewers to have a look at this book that Christopher Dunn has published. It has very detailed like explanation with all the schemas, how it works. And that's why the question is, why from a point of view, the 3 inches are left and are not actually, the shafts are not going through the Queen's chamber.
Yes, and essentially that is so that they could actually control the rate of flow of the chemical that passes through.
Are coming inside. So these 2 shafts were used to bring inside the chemicals.
Right.
But why then these shafts are not going through? They are not reaching the chamber itself. How they can, I mean, bring the chemicals?
They had holes that were drilled in them, so they have these openings, very, very small openings, which restrict the amount of chemicals that will come into the chamber. Otherwise, they would just flood the chamber, and that's not what they wanted. They wanted just enough of each chemical to create the correct volume of gas in order to sustain the.
So it was a way by the apparatus of the pyramid to control the amount of chemicals coming inside the Queen chamber, correct?
Yes, and that was that. This is their control, and so what you see at the upper end of the shaft, the Gantenbrink's door, and what you see at the bottom, which is the very small hole rather than a large hole going through into the Queen's chamber, they actually work together, and you have the fluid passing through the small hole into the Queen's chamber and mixing with the chemical coming from the other shaft. And as that happens, the level of the fluid at the Gantenbrink's door level, the level of the fluid drops until it does not allow electrons to flow between the 2 electrodes, signaling the need for more chemicals so that they can maintain a head pressure or a pressure on the lower part to accurately meter or feed a chemical into that space. Does that explain it sufficiently?
Yep. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So I'll move on to the next one. that was
This is
that,
sorry.
that
This is
explanation.
a threatening picture how they are drilling. So this was the second experiment with a robot, or what actually they are doing?
Yes, this was the Pyramid Rover in September of 2002.
Okay.
And this is when they equipped the robot with a drill and sent it up the shaft to the Gantenbrink's door and drilled a hole through it. And when they drilled the hole through it and they got to look inside, they had a like an orthoscopic camera lens, and so the image is kind of distorted and the light source is highly focused, and so a lot of detail is kind of washed out in that image. But the interesting thing was that I had made a prediction at that time that what they would find would be the continuation of the electrodes in that are seen, on the front side of the door and on the back side, and going to another, some other place. But their equipment was not capable of making any further discoveries than what you see right there. So I adjusted my my drawing and included the 3.25 measured inches, and then I also corrected the shaft that may actually go to the source of the maybe it's like a cistern or some kind of a holding tank for the chemical, and then a very small shaft to be able to pump it up to keep the shaft replenished. Interestingly, their robot, they accomplished on their mission and exploration what Gantenbrink could not accomplish with his robot. Gantenbrink's robot gripped the floor and the ceiling, and that's how they climbed. That's how the robot climbed the shaft. When he tried to, Gantenbrink tried to explore the northern shaft, but there was some objects in his way. There was a long rod, and the long rod was jammed where the northern shaft bent and moved off to a different direction. And then the Pyramid Rover crew, they decided that they would do it differently. They rotated their robot 90 degrees so that it would grip the walls rather than the floor and ceiling. And by gripping the walls, they rode over those obstructions and made their way to the northern shaft, the northern block, the upper block. The interesting thing about this this discovery here, which actually supports the theory that I propose, in that it shows two what I call electrodes, and one of the electrodes appears to be electroplated. It has a deposit on it. And my interpretation of that is that because the shaft held a zinc, hydrated zinc solution, that if they were able to do a test of that, forensic analysis of that material, they would probably, I would predict that they would find that it's a zinc coating. And all these features, these are people who are working in chemistry or work with batteries. They recognize the signs that you see right here. Even somebody who has a battery in their car, they will be able to see where one of the electrodes has a buildup that needs to be brushed away. this is a shaft. This is a very interesting feature on the outside that I thought that perhaps it had something to do with the feeding of chemicals inside the pyramid. So with the inclusion of different shafts through the pyramid to those parts, you could actually, you wouldn't have to go inside the pyramid in order to feed chemicals into those shafts. You could do it from the outside. Now, this is another exploration in May 2010. It was published in 2011, and they used what they call a Jedi robot. This robot had the ability to, it had like a camera that they could snake around and explore the backside of Gantenbrink store further. And so this is what they were able to discover when they looked on the backside of the door. They saw that the electrodes actually looped around, and they seemed to enter or disappear into a hole on the backside of the block. It's very interesting design characteristic, I thought. And then you see other features on this that are interesting, where you see the corrosion or the buildup of material on the electrode on the right. On the left, as we're looking at it here. And so that is another indication of the chemical and electrical function of this particular feature of the Great Pyramid. And also, if you look at the right electrode, there seems to be some kind of what I would interpret to be like an insulation material surrounding the pin that's coming through. And then the robot was able to photograph the floor and the backside of the Gantenbrink store, and they found these unusual markings where you have this red ochre kind of marking here, and then the features where you seem to have like a stick man and two numbers or glyphs that they could not find any correlation to any known hieroglyph, and were quite puzzled at their appearance. They assumed that they may be Mason's marks. I had a different assumption. I assumed that they were electrical symbols, and really they were kind of maintenance instructions on how the wiring actually worked of the Gantenbrink store. So I was really excited to see that, because that was like more confirmation. And so what I saw with this particular symbol was what we call, I don't know what they call it in Russia, but we call them like a twisted pair, where you have a central cable, and then you've got two leads that come out of it, and you have a negative and positive. So you have a cable here, this is shown here, and then you twist it around, and you've got your negative and positive leads. And then these I interpreted to be connectors that were incorporated inside the limestone. And based on that, I created this.
Christopher, maybe we can just come back to the previous slide where you was showing to us what the floor or the ceiling of that part of the shaft behind Gantenbrink door. So this is exactly these depictions are where? On the floor?
On the floor, yes.
On the floor.
Yes, those are on the floor, and and these are the backside of the limestone blockage, or the Gantenbrink so-called door. So that's the backside, and these are actually on the floor. And the red line would actually lead to the electrode on the left side that we're looking at right here. So that's identifying, I think, a polarity.
Thank you so much.
We also have comments from our viewers on the web that say that these look like anode and cathode, and hydrochloric acid and salt both made to extract monoatomic gold or ormus. So I don't know where.
I'm happy to hear that they say that they're an anode and cathode, because in my view that's exactly what they are. And you know, whatever their creative imaginations can come up with, that's fine too. And so this in this image, I demonstrate how those electrodes were wired, and that explain the markings on the floor. And then I go to actually creating a model of the Gantenbrink store with the electrodes and the connectors in it, and demonstrate how it works. And I think this is a video that I took, very short video. I had built a short section of the southern shaft, but it has the same dimensions as the southern shaft, except for the length of it. And there you have the electrodes coming through and circling around and inserted into these holes on the back. There was a popular show in America, and I'm not sure if you're aware of it. This was called Ancient Aliens, and I was asked to present on that one time, and I actually demonstrated the concept that I've just discussed, where fluid fills that particular shaft, makes a connection with the electrodes, and then I demonstrate by releasing the fluid how the electrodes will cause a circuit when covered with the fluid, and then the circuit is open when the fluid falls. And so based on that, I had made another drawing on how they actually may be connected to the outside. So the maintenance issues. It seems that the southern shaft would need a periodic maintenance because of the corrosive effects of the hydrochloric acid. And as you can see, and compare these electrodes with those in the northern shaft, those in the southern shaft do seem to have been severely corroded over time. And the corrosion pattern is consistent with what you would have if, you know, the lower part of the electrode is submerged longer in the fluid than the upper part of the electrode, and so you would have a tapering effect. Another aspect to it is, and this is where I think it becomes very exciting, in that there's still more to be discovered inside the Great Pyramid, and so the other aspect to maintenance is you have to have access in order to maintain that particular feature. And Jean-Pierre Houdin, who actually proposed an internal ramp theory and believed he had actually detected that ramp actually exists, I can't disagree that there would be internal ramps. There would have to be some means for maintenance workers to reach the back of at least the southern shaft and make routine repairs. And so that is basically the concept of the Great Pyramid. And the refresher of the original slide showing the different features. We're going to move on now. If there's any questions, please bring them up, and if not, we can move on. Okay.
Just to clarify, so you said like you don't agree with the theory of Pierre Houdin, yeah? That or you agrees with the theory of Pierre Houdin how the pyramid was?
Well, I think his theory has elements that are believable, because you know, when you talk about delivering stone to build a particular structure, if you have a pyramid like that, it would make sense to use what has already been built as a means to deliver the product to a higher level. The only issue that I take with it is that I don't think that's the way the pyramid was built. I don't think it was built by sliding blocks along ramps, and but that's just me. You know, that's just my gut instinct. I do believe that they had the means to reduce the effects of gravity, and I mean, this is what allowed them to build a society that was built of these magnificent, huge monolithic artifacts, like 1,000-ton statues, and you know, 500,000, 1,200-ton obelisks. I mean, all these huge elements, and even the size of the blocks that go into building the pyramids. I mean, they are huge, and you know, to imagine all of this done in a very efficient way by simply dragging these blocks across the desert floor does not make sense to me. But that's, you know, that is yet to be decided in my view. You can come up with all kinds of theories, but I would never propose something about how the pyramid was built and use conventional mechanics on it, you know, or known physics, because I do think that there is an area of physics that will yet to be discovered that will allow us to understand more about gravity and how to defeat it. Okay.
If I may have a question.
Yes.
So taking into consideration that what you have said, that pyramids have been used as a power plants, do you have an idea how the power was transmitted at that time, and whether they had a technology that could even store the power?
You know, that is a very good question, and it's a question that is really, it has no clear answer at this time. And it's really one that has been used to argue against the concept of the pyramid being a power plant, because we don't find existing and under the desert floor, you know, these trash heaps that have toaster ovens or microwave ovens, or, you know, other objects that would require electricity to power. Those things have not been found. And so then the question is, well, you know, we don't see this in the archaeological records. The only thing we have is, you know, the Great Pyramid. And to that, the only evidence, in my book, I take it as far as the exit point on the southern shaft, and I project it out into space. And so, you know, I mean, as far as tapping into it and what we do with it, that's, you know, limited only by people's imaginations. And, you know, you can, there are proposals where these energy-rich countries, you know, that have a lot of geothermal energy, like Iceland, they have a lot of geothermal energy. And there was a proposal that they could tap into that energy, but they didn't have a need to use it all, but they could actually convert it into microwaves and use a relay satellite and beam it to another part of the planet that could actually use that energy, sell it to them. I don't think that has ever actually come to fruition or come to pass yet, but that was one of the ideas that was floated. And so it's not unreasonable to think that. Oh, I mean, they're talking now that even these spaceships that go into space, that the energy is beamed to the spaceships from Earth so that they can reduce their payload to escape Earth's orbit. And so, you know, these ideas are floating around there and taken seriously. I mean, they may not be adopted, or they may not be able to find the funding to put them into practice, but they're certainly technically possible. Okay, so as we go through the Great Pyramid, and we talked earlier about the function of the Grand Gallery. The Grand Gallery is an acoustic marvel. I mean, it has the features of like a concert hall, really. And my proposal was that that it contained resonators, and these resonators were tuned to certain frequencies that responded to the vibrations coming through the pyramid, and then that was converted to airborne sound and focused into the King's Chamber, causing it to resonate too. The supporting that is the observations from different researchers who have done acoustic tests within that space, and they found that sound that is generated in the Grand Gallery will focus through the horizontal passage into the King's Chamber and resonate in the King's Chamber. Paul Horn, who was he played the flute, he created a record called Inside the Great Pyramid, and he noted that in his booklet that accompanied his LP album. He said that the sound within that space was flat, but it was resonating behind him in the King's Chamber. So when we look at the Grand Gallery, there are features that seem to indicate that there was something installed there. And some of the features seem to support the idea that you could affix these structures within that space using slots that were in the ramp. There was 27 pair of them, and then there was a slot that goes the length of the gallery. And so you could bring in a resonator bank, drop it into the slot, align it so that the pinholes aligned with the groove that went the length of it, and then just shoot a pin into that groove to hold it in position, and it won't move. So that was my idea for the Grand Gallery. Now, as far as the tuning fork type vibrators, in consultation with a good, really brilliant physicist who had read my book and contacted me, and he was quite an impressive guy in his own right. But he thought that the Helmholtz resonator resonators were not used in the Grand Gallery, but the King's Chamber itself was a Helmholtz resonator. So, you know, the distinction between an open resonator and a Helmholtz resonator was made a little clearer to me, and I'll be updating that part in my next book. It's great when you have people who come to you and tell you, well, you know, you're not quite correct on that, and but if you could change it, then that would work a little better. Now we get to a part that I think Olga, you were interested in, and that was the theory that there was an explosion in the King's Chamber, and I introduced that idea in my book, and it was really based on, when I wrote the book, it was based on the features in the Grand Gallery. I mean, in the King's Chamber, where the walls were expanded over an inch, and it was shown that there had been a disturbance within the King's Chamber, and the granite beams above the King's Chamber had cracked. So as we going, you know, as we're reaching the top of the Grand Gallery, this photograph was taken, I think, around 1995 or something like that. And as you can see, there's a lot of dirt and dust all over the place. Now, I was back again in 2001, and I took this photograph, and you can see that this is the ceiling. It's showing the ceiling and the walls of the Grand Gallery, and on the ceiling you see these scorch marks that when they cleaned the inside, they could not evidently remove the scorch marks. Now, those are interesting in that when you talk about how the ancient Egyptians were able to decorate their tombs without leaving, you know, any smoke or smudge from their torches, and then you look into this area and you see this is not just simple smudge. This is a high heat, and so when you look at the pattern and location of these scorch marks, and you trace them down, they are actually are over the slots on the ramp in the Grand Gallery. So the resonators, I'm not sure what material they were made out of, but whatever happened in the King's Chamber also affected the Grand Gallery and the resonators that were contained within the Grand Gallery. And you see the effects of them burning up on the ceiling.
So just to make sure that you're supporting the theory that it was explosion in the King's Chamber, because some of the studies are saying that it was by accident the earthquake, and that's why the people have to who was taking care of the pyramids have to repair these beams. But your position is that it was an explosion, right?
Yes, and really I mean, even without this evidence here, you don't have any evidence in the lower parts of the Great Pyramid that are similar in their destruction. So you have a perfectly crafted Queen's Chamber. The passageway going down to the subterranean chamber, over 150 feet of the constructed portion of that passageway is within 20 thousandths of an inch, or the thickness of a thumbnail, of being absolutely straight. No disturbance whatsoever. in the Queen's Chamber, you look at the fitting of the blocks, the limestone blocks in the Queen's Chamber, and they're perfectly fitted, perfectly aligned. You can't even put a credit card between the joints. So you have this extraordinary stable precision in the lower part of the Great Pyramid, and then just in the King's Chamber, you have the evidence of a disturbance that does not collapse the walls or cause the walls to collapse inwards, but it pushes them out. And so, you know, I question the earthquake theory. The other part of that is that when you're talking about this system, and you're talking about a very volatile gas like hydrogen, and you can see that maybe something happened that caused an explosion with the gas, and that's what caused all this destruction. And related to that, I would introduce the idea of an event that actually, you know, caused massive destruction throughout the planet. You know, a natural catastrophe that periodically visits our planet, comet strike, or, you know, something of that nature that would cause huge Earth disturbances. And considering that, you know, we are like a closed loop, you know, the Earth itself has known quantities that we work with. Like, and if you are designing a power plant to maximize the feedback from the Earth of mechanical energy, you are working with a known quantity of energy. So that's how you design your system, with a known quantity. And then also if you introduce a massive amount of energy all at once, then you could destroy the system. It would not be able to attenuate or dissipate the energy fast enough before it would actually shake apart and become, you know, and destroy itself. This is the nature of oscillators, actually, whether it's a laser oscillator or any other kind of oscillator. Like lasers, I mean, those have to be cooled with water. And if you're working with a solid state laser, and the water supply that cools the rod actually disappears, or it malfunctions, then that rod will eventually destroy itself through heat, because it can't get rid of the heat fast enough. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Too much, huh?
Yeah, it's good because, you know, to have a real understanding of what was going on in such a detailed way. We really appreciate this opportunity of having this detailed lecture, I would say.
Well, the other aspect to it is you know, in the King's Chamber, not only were the walls expanded, but the coffer, presumably all the granite that came down to build the King's Chamber came from Aswan, which is a pink granite. The granite in the coffer, or as some people call it, sarcophagus, was made out of a chocolate brown, or was it made out of a chocolate brown? It would have been cooked at the time that explosion happened, and so would that have affected the color of the granite? Normally, if you cook something too much, you do affect the color of it. I know, because I've burned a few dishes in my time. Okay. And these are some of the marks on the gallery wall that I just showed you. So then we'll have an overview of what was going on from the point of view looking down on the King's Chamber. Acoustic energy and hydrogen input from the Grand Gallery go through what I call an acoustic filter, and that was contained within the antechamber leading into the King's Chamber. And that would filter out any extraneous frequencies and allow a pure signal to enter the King's Chamber and resonate there. Some of the interesting features about the King's Chamber is the dimensions, which I'm going to be able to flesh out in more detail in my next book. But essentially, the quarter wave concept, where the amplitude of a wave, a power, the amplitude or the wave height appear at a quarter the distance of the resonator. So you look at the dimensions and the positioning of the shafts in the King's Chamber of the Great Pyramid, and they are 1/4 the length of the chamber. And there's a lot more to it than that too. I've actually teamed up with a sound engineer, and we have been to Egypt twice now doing further studies. And so his work and his discoveries and findings will feature in my next book. In my book, I had actually positioned the coffer between the shafts, because I thought that perhaps it had something to do with modifying the signal, or at least being able to refocus it as it came through the chamber. That has also, I think, been modified. And so my next book, I will talk about the cavity being a resonator within a resonator, and it has a purpose to actually draw off the much higher frequencies and to maintain a power. It's almost like an acoustic engine, so it would function similarly to that, an acoustic engine. Now, so we have another interesting thing, and more information has come my way, is the granite itself and how it functions within the concept of the power plant. And originally, I had discussed the piezoelectric effect of quartz crystal, and from the books that I had sourced and read, they claim that the quartz crystal comprised 55% of the granite. A very qualified geologist that accompanied our tour that I was leading in 2018 and became a member of the team, advised me that that's not necessarily correct, that he thought that the composition of quartz in the granite was only about 20%. So that has to be accommodated and corrected. But at the same time, information came from a researcher in NASA, who was a geophysicist, and so his work has been ongoing since 1997, I think, and it's focused on studying earthquake lights and how they are created, and if they could be used to predict when an earthquake may happen. And so that's all very interesting work. And he actually did a study of different rocks and materials and how they react to pressures, such as, you know, like you would take a piece of granite and fixture it and hold it and hammer it, but, you know, with a rubber mallet or something like that. What kind of signal do you get from it, and what are the effects of that signal? And what he has found is that you can actually ionize the air around a block of granite just by stressing it, and it doesn't take that much. So that information is also of great interest to me.
Christopher, can I just quickly read a couple of questions from the audience?
Yes.
They ask if the pyramid emits specific frequencies, and if yes, then which frequencies, and also if they do tap into the Schumann resonance frequency range.
Yes, that's an interesting, very interesting question. There's been a lot of discussion about the Schumann resonance. The frequencies inside the King's chamber, they were actually detected by Tom Danley, who was a NASA acoustics engineer and did studies there in, I think, 1995, as part of what they called the Shore expedition. And Tom Danley detected that in the King's chamber, they had frequencies that approximated an F-sharp chord, and so, you know, the frequencies there were they were subsonic. I mean, they were like between 2 and 9 hertz. He reported, so they're very low frequencies, and then, you know, he did not speak to the Schumann resonance because the Schumann resonance is a function of the atmosphere, the tension of the atmosphere, and the distance is a function of the distance between the Earth and the ionosphere, and so you have, you know, 2 different kinds of energies. So I don't really speak to the Schumann resonance in my book. I mean, if there was a connection, and there may be, that I just don't see, then I would, you know, definitely include it. And maybe I'm just missing something, but, you know, I think for the evidence that we do have, and, you know, we're talking the Schumann resonances are electromagnetic frequencies, and these are mechanical frequencies. So, but certainly, Schumann resonance is what, 7 to 8 hertz?
7.83, yes.
Yep. And so it's within that range that we find inside the King's chamber. But even at that, I mean, doesn't that make sense though? Because when we look at our entire system and how the Earth functions and its relationship with the other heavenly bodies, you know, you talk about the music of the spheres, right? And how everything is connected. Why wouldn't you have that kind of relationship, whether it's electromagnetic or mechanical? Because one can feed into the other, correct? They interact together. The other part is also that I proposed in my book that the Earth's hum was may have you know, been a part of it, and that is just the hum is the action created by, if you look at the Earth as like a electromagnetic motor or something like that, where you have, you know, two objects rotating against each other, and create that tension between them, and the nature of the energy that's created, it creates a sound. And but then again, you have also the function of tides the moon as it orbits has a huge influence on the Earth, and is actually integral to the dynamics of the Earth, and is, you know, that's a part of it too, and everything is related. So human resonance, absolutely, and you know, can you actually affect the human resonance by running these pyramids or firing them up again? Those are all questions I don't know the answers to right now.
Yeah, and if you're interested, actually, there is also great research from Russian scientist Vladimir Yashkardin, which we did study quite extensively, and he's also, like, there are similar functions described in what you are showing on your graphics and in the book, but he's thinking that this is more like a vibroacoustic generator, and he did also all the calculations that how it was used, and if, I mean, at some later point, at another time, maybe you would like, I can explain, because it's only in Russian, I can explain what we understood from his findings.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'd certainly like, I mean, I know that the Russians are probably further ahead in their pyramid researches than we are in the West, because they are more open to entertaining these ideas. There seems to be a wall of resistance in academia here towards these ideas, but hopefully that will change. But you know, as far as my overview, it's more of, I would say I'm more of a mechanic, in that I'm trying to figure out how this machine works, and you know, to actually recreate it, I would have to employ, you know, physicists and computer engineers and, you know, acoustic engineers, those who understand the science and the physics at a higher level. But, you know, I'm just explaining, hey, this is a machine, and this is, you know, how I think it's going, how I think it works. But so yeah, just a sharing of ideas. On a lot of things, in my travels in Egypt, I always put myself, I consider myself to be more like a bell ringer, you know, and I go as a tourist, and I make observations, and you know, and I report on my observations, and they seem to catch on, and so that seems to work for me. But I don't pretend to be anything more than what I am. This is the photograph that I took in 1986 of the opening in the north wall and the south wall in the King's Chamber. And these are the dimensions of the what I call a waveguide. And then, as you can see in the south wall, you have a feature that looks like a microwave horn antenna. So very, very significant, I think. And those, yeah, I actually took colored photographs of them. It's the south wall, and that's today with the shaft installed. And as you can see, probably would not have come up with that concept if that fan had been installed in 1986 when I first went there. And that's the northern shaft. Tom Danley also reported in his on his research that he had detected that the floor was also suspended on what he considered to be like nodes, or like an egg crate carton or something like that. And the features of this chamber, the way that it was constructed, increased the resonance factor of it. So there would be very little damping to any vibration that was passing through the granite. And you can see that in the floor, but also the walls were built within the core masonry of the Great Pyramid. And the floor itself was not, the walls were not built on top of the floor. The floor was built inside the space, so there was no pushing down or damping of the space, because that would create a dead spot in the corners if you had that. And so the whole objective, in my opinion, was to create a structure that was free, where all dampening was reduced to a minimum. And as you can see in the antechamber, I actually created a graphic showing what I consider to be the filters, where the sound coming through would actually pass through that and filter out extraneous frequencies. Back to it is the granite beams above are actually cut square and straight on three sides, the underside and two other sides. But the top part of them is rough, and some of them even have holes bored into them. And so what I propose in the Giza power plant is that was done to actually tune those granite beams to a specific frequency, so that they would resonate in harmony with the energy coming through from the Grand Gallery and also through the pyramid itself. They would resonate at a particular frequency.
Yeah, I mean, they look a lot like sound lenses with an angle deflector, like aiming the waves down to the sarcophagus, which is a resonator. Yeah, and we can calculate also its internal frequency, which is open, is 98 hertz and 196, I guess, if it's closed.
Yeah. When I was younger, I would have gone up there, but not today, I don't think. It's but the whole mystery of those spaces I found to be very interesting. And then also some of the early explorers, they had discovered this black substance in some of the openings, the immediate openings, like in the opening right above the King's Chamber. They found this black powder that they assumed it was what they call exuviae, which is the cast-off shells and skins of insects. I proposed that it was actually a material that had shaken off the limestone bedrock and had become cooked as it was suspended in the air when the explosion happened, and that then it finally deposited on the top of the beams. So that was my interpretation of that.
So this black powder, you're saying it's basically the result of this chemical reaction that was taking place in the power plant, or this is the result of this explosion that was by accident, that happened by accident in the power plant?
Yes, I mean, I think both may be possible. I had selected the explosion as being the cause, but was it a result of the pyramid functioning for over a long period of time? That is another good question to ask, I think. I don't know. I don't know. So here we have the concept of the Great Pyramid being a huge musical instrument, and except it has a louder voice, you know, than any other instrument that I think we have created. But it has all, you know, it's a comprehensive and all-inclusive view that brings into the theory explanations for all the features within the Great Pyramid. Grand Gallery, and you can see, we talked about the acoustic brilliance that you see there, but then, you know, the similarities that you have between the Grand Gallery and other concert halls with some of the geometries that are used. And then there was a an interesting question that you asked, Olga, about the trial passages, or I think you called them something else, test corridors. And, you know, we talked earlier about what process you would follow to actually recreate the Great Pyramid and build another one. Well, one of the things that we would probably do before closing everything up, we would test the equipment to make sure that everything was functioning properly. We'd actually build the King's Chamber in a place, a remote place, or somewhere outside the structure, and also the resonators in the Grand Gallery to make sure that everything was functioning, and then we would activate it, introduce the hydrogen, maybe a different way. And so what we find on the east side of the Great Pyramid are these trial passages, and they have similar features to what you find in the lower parts of the Great Pyramid. You have a horizontal passage, the start of a horizontal passage. You have the start of the lower part of the Grand Gallery, and then the descending passage. Now, one of the interesting things that I would like to note is that, you know, when we install machinery in a plant, a lot of times in a manufacturing factory, a lot of times the machinery is inserted into an excavation or a pit. So you would actually prepare a place for the lower parts of the machine to sit. This happens all the time, And similarly, this could be just the lower parts of the outside installation where they decided to dig down rather than build up. And I should imagine that they had all of these technologies were tested previously without being inside the mass of the Great Pyramid. And that it was held within a structure, so that you wouldn't see it from the outside. You would see what was going on, but all of the elements within the Great Pyramid were tested and made sure that they would function when finally installed. So that's the trial passages. Do you have any questions about that? Those were discovered by William Flinders Petrie, and he took measurements of them too. Interestingly, and I just want to close with the buzz that's going around the pyramids now in Egypt. This is a scan pyramid mission, and it raises a huge question in my mind. You have a mission that has the full authority of the Arab Republic of Egypt, Ministry of Antiquities, the HIP Institute, the Faculty of Engineering of Cairo University. And when I visited there in 2019, I have another research partner. His name is Eric Wilson. He's an aerospace engineer. And we were actually on the Nile, and he found out about the a concert that was going on at the Great Pyramid and bought tickets to it. But he got friendly with the Scam Pyramid team, and was actually recruited to help them repair some of their equipment. Anyway, the big question and the intrigue that I have is that supposedly they're looking for the tomb or the space where Khufu was buried, and in order to do that, they employed or they enlisted the help of the French Alternative Energy, Japan High Energy Physics Research, a university in Japan, in Canada, French Computer Science, Center for Scientific Research in France. All of these really heavy hitters are really high quality research labs. I find that the research into the discovery of Khufu's tomb in the Great Pyramid makes me question. I think they're looking for something else. But that is the story that they have to tell. And yeah, Dassault Systems. I mean, a lot of companies who are stakeholders in this research, and stakeholders have a right to receive the results of the research. But what they did find with their muonography, they are actually using muon detection plates throughout the pyramid to determine if to discover where voids may exist within the Great Pyramid. And they found a void that is just close to the northern shaft in the King's Chamber. And that's interesting to me. And of course, I got a lot of questions. Well, what do you think of that? Does that fit into your view or your theory on the Great Pyramids? And I said, well, I really don't have an answer for that yet, because it's very, I mean, the resolution of the image is very low, without actual clear dimensions, or at least a clear photograph of what that void may be in terms of its shape. Is it on an angle, or is it horizontal to the ground? How close to the northern shaft is it? There's a lot of unanswered questions, but does it have anything to do with the acoustics of the Great Pyramid? And as I was pondering this, I got a call from my friend Eric, and he told me that he knew what it was. So he indicated that it really fit very well into the Giza power plant theory, and that will be included in my next book. But it needs to be worked out a little more thoroughly before going public with it. It's just a teaser. I hope you don't mind. I think I'm almost to the close. I think I went long, right?
We would like to thank you so much for this detailed explanation of the power plant, how it works. We just would like to summarize some points, and it will allow us also to prepare for the second session with you. Basically, you was using reverse engineering to see how the power plant works. Also, you used acoustic modeling, so you was measuring the acoustics of Grand Gallery. And from your point of view, you told us that it's a geomechanical plant, so it was transforming the mechanical energy to electromagnetic energy. And the only question may be how it starts to function. I mean, this because you know there are some, I call it tellurical flows that are emanating from the Earth. So this is basically can be used as a starting point how it functions, or like the starting point how to make this initial impetus from the Earth. What is it from your point of view?
Yes, well, assuming that you worked out all the other details and you actually built the device, how do you turn it on? Is that your question? So how do you turn it on? The control mechanisms are actually accessible from the outside, and you turn it on by applying a force, a sharp force, to the roof of the subterranean chamber, and that force is then carried through the pyramid, but it's also what connects it acoustically to the Earth. So you have like a feedback mechanism between the two. And there is some recent research I really can't disclose right now, but it's in one of our labs where a machine was built with dimensions that approximate relationships, correspondences that approximate the Great Pyramid. And it was shown that it works if you just wrap it, one part of it with a hammer, and it will function and just continue to operate. So it may not be a continuous thing that you need to do, but the applied force in the subchamber, that's what makes it all work. Another researcher, John Cadman, believes that it's a hydraulic pulse that causes things to work. And I've discussed it with him. He built a replica of the subterranean chamber and demonstrated how it can work as a pulse generator. And so that's very interesting research. You know, there may be other ways to be able to do it, but you know, the question is how do you turn it on? How do you control it? And so you turn the key in your car and start your engine, and then you control it with the gas pedal and your brake, and you know. So those controls, you'd like to know that you would be able to control what's going on inside the Great Pyramid as it's functioning, to make sure that it's not out of control. And so there is you can do that acoustically because it is a very sensitive instrument, and so it functions depending on the harmonics and the purity of a signal, and you can control that by introducing out of phase signals into that space that would reduce the power, but ultimately you would want to keep the power at as high a level as possible. I would assume that there is a point where you would reduce the power so much, or the acoustic energy so much, that it would actually shut down. The process would cease. And then, of course, with the function of the Queen's chamber and the creation of gases, the control there would be to just let the the shafts drain of the chemical, they would just drain out into the quench chamber, and you wouldn't replenish them.
Yeah, so basically we can see that it is a complex mechanical device, and there are the result of evidence that there are lenses that control like the feedback loop mechanism, and
Right.
of course as even electronic generator, you need to do the initial click and then maintain and supplement the energy losses that are needed for the vibration, so that the resonator keeps vibrating. So it is kind of the mechanism. And when you open the plug, which you can see at one of the entrances, like a huge granite plug, then the energy flow supplementing the generator just stops, right? Something like this. And
Yeah,
I think it's very interesting. It's amazing that there are such great theories proven by also your experience in engineering. And you've obviously connected with a lot of people and specialists in their own fields, and, you know, connecting the dots together. And this really inspires us to continue also researching and asking questions and talk to great people like yourself.
well, I really appreciate it, and you know, that is my whole objective, and it has been my dream that you know, people would actually see some merit in it and take the research further, be inspired enough to take it further than I could, because I don't have the resources to build a pyramid. But if I could inspire somebody who has some political clout or some political influence to, you know, to be able to study it further, then that's mission accomplished for me. So thank you. I really appreciate your interest in it and your comments. Thanks.
Yeah, sure. And maybe just a small idea about the activation is there's also an understanding that the pyramids as a device, not only a standalone pyramid, but the whole, let's say, pyramidal complex all over the world could also be activated by so-called operators, which is people who are placed in the pyramids. So there is an understanding that let's say, spiritual free person who is controlling the thoughts and stuff like that is really able to give this impulse for all of this complex to be activated. So we also think that it's worth of considering this aspect, and hopefully we'll be able to prove it in the creative society that we are aiming at.
I think, yes, I mean, there are some very forward thinkers that I've heard about, that, you know, the human component of machine operation, or, you know, they're actually having the human become more a part of how a system functions, but to do it in a harmonic and more spiritual way. So you have to have somebody who is a little bit more talented or more gifted in terms of their ability to use their minds, and what other, you know, qualities that they may have, and to actually interact with machines and make them function. And they may be essential to the function of a machine. In other words, if you have not been trained or you're not sufficiently evolved, then this machine is not going to work for you. That would be quite something, wouldn't it?
Yeah, but also what we are aware that this brings a lot of responsibility, because with issuing such a great amount of force, we'll need to kind of define how this force is going to be used. So this is a big responsibility for the people, and in this let's say society where we live in today, not sure how this would what impact this could have.
Yeah.
This brings.
And I think I don't see, I mean, when you talk about the perfect society, how you want it, you know, how you envision it to function. If you look in history, there are people who have, you know, kind of secluded themselves away from, you know, the common flow of society. They create communes and ashrams, or, you know, they have these new frontier closed kind of communities where only similar-minded people are accepted into their group. And I've known a few of them, but, you know, the Paramahansa Yogananda, he had ashrams in Sacramento, California, near the Ananda village. And there was a community in northern Illinois called Stell, and it was populated with people who, you know, were not happy with the way the rest of the world functioned, and they wanted to be away from, you know, the madness and you know, live in peace and live off the land. So you know, there are those inclinations in everybody to improve the world in some way.
Marek actually brought us to a very important topic, giving this topic of apparatus of the pyramids. So we are now also implementing another project that is a global one. It's called Creative Society. And as you mentioned yourself in the beginning of our conversation, that you're also thinking about what you call it generation revolution. So we see that all the scientists from time to time are coming to this understanding that something needs to be changed, that something, you know, in order to develop science in the way that it will serve humanity, we need also to create conditions that science will be serving humanity. And Creative Society project was implemented also on the platform of ALLATRA International Public Movement, and now Alexei will tell us more about it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, I mean, you know, we were making social studies, actually asking people on the streets, online, like we do today, and we asked a lot of people, like literally, I guess, millions of people were asked what is the world they would like to live in, and we compiled from their responses 8 foundations of the Creative Society, and the first and the most important one is the human life, because if we build everything in a way so that it protects the life of every human being, I mean, not a particular group, not some people who have a certain mindset or ideas, no, every human being, then also, of course, science will be serving only the development and the betterment of the human society, our lives, and not to kill each other. I mean, not creating weapons of mass destruction or any kind of weapons. And in this way, we would not have also projects that a lot of universities come together to scan the pyramids looking for the tomb, when, I mean, anyone looking at this thing understands it was not a tomb, and there was never a tomb inside the pyramid. And obviously, this project is somehow of a public utility, but the public did not vote for this. And if there were really a will to create a better place for everyone, then the questions of free energy, which the pyramidal complex obviously generated, would be one of the first ones to solve, right?
Yeah. And and to your point, I have actually I wrote a foreword to one book called The Spiritual Technologies of Ancient Egypt by Edward Malkowski. And in my foreword, I pleaded, with engineers to design their products that, in a way, that are more harmonious with the human body and mind and the frequencies of our DNA. So, our systems, our engineering systems are built on frequency. It's kind of like, you come to America and the rotation of a turbine for the generation of electricity is 60 hertz. In Egypt, you go, it's 50 hertz, and so when they design a refrigerator that you're going to have humming in the background in your kitchen, the frequency that it emits can be either harmonious, or it can be beneficial to the human body, or otherwise. The frequencies of the noises, our acoustic environment could be improved with the engineering. And so, to have engineers actually focus on that and to become well versed in DNA frequencies. And there is a woman who contacted me. Her name is Susan Alexander, and she had worked with a biologist who had actually mapped the frequencies of human DNA. And she had composed music based on those frequencies, obviously at a much lower frequency, because DNA resonates at a much higher frequency. And so she's written some pretty amazing pieces just using the frequencies of human DNA, so it would resonate with people. And F sharp and C sharp figured very strongly within those frequencies. And that's why she connected with me when she read my book, because she read about the F sharp chord in the King's Chamber.
This is very interesting. This is very interesting. Yeah. So, Christopher, I would like to thank you for today's interview. Before we finish, I would also like to announce that on January the 13th, we will have our following Kaleidoscope of Facts event. And here we would like to welcome you also to attend, of course. And we would also be grateful if you agreed to join our second part of the Kaleidoscope of Facts on pyramids that will come sometime in spring this year. And we are really honored with the fact that you have dedicated your precious time to interview, and we really appreciate all of your findings and mainly your human approach. And maybe someone else would like to express some thoughts before we finish as well.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that. Thanks.
Yes, I think such discussions are bringing us, all the people who are involved also in viewing us to final understanding what actually the pyramids were used for. So unless we actually make a step to discuss and to see how it works, we will never be able to understand this. So the more scientists we are bringing together, the more hypotheses we are considering, the closer we are to this understanding what is these beautiful structures that ancient left to us.
It's a very worthy mission, very important mission. So I support you completely, and I'm looking forward to the next roundtable discussion.
Thank you, Christopher. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much,
Dunn.
Christopher.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.